Hello. Today we're speaking with Emmanuele Angione, who is the managing partner and founder, as I understand it, of Lira, a consulting company based in Dublin, among other European cities. How are you, Emmanuele?
I'm good. What about you, Sean?
Very good, thank you. So you are a type of person that, like me, for most of my career, has made a living off the European Union without working at the European Union. Can you explain what you do?
Yeah. Let me give you a bit of my background, because before co-founding and starting Lira, I was in the medtech. So I co-founded and I sold a medtech company.
Okay.
And then at a certain point, I decided to co-found Lira with my co-founder Paul, because the idea was there are a lot of deep tech entrepreneurs out there.
Okay, just one
And
second. For our viewers who might not know what deep tech is technology based on usually decades of research, right? It's usually spin-offs of universities, where Silicon Valley and venture capitalists don't tend to invest because it's just a long return on investment. Is that correct?
That's correct. In the US, they have other government grants, like for instance the SBIR, but deep tech is basically based on breakthrough technology that takes years to develop within the, let's say, university context, the lab, and it's really hard at a certain point to bring to market because the risk of failing is very high and is by definition capital intensive. So that means that it takes time and money to develop.
Okay, so there's a risk element to it. How do you separate what you do at Lira from like what a Silicon Valley venture capitalist does? What's the risk to reward ratio? Because we're dealing with public money, of course, and not private money, at least at this.
So I suppose
the grants that you support, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So first and foremost, if we compare to Silicon Valley, I mean, we are not a VC fund. We are not GPs of a VC fund that are raising money from investors called limited partners and then invest in companies. We are just a consulting firm. They call us innovation consultants. I still don't know what that means, but basically it's like there are a lot of fantastic companies in member states and associated countries that want to apply to funding schemes where they can be awarded a grant component and an equity component. So they come to us. I suppose we have the expertise, know-how.
Sorry, when you refer to a grant component and an equity component of what? What do you mean exactly? Walk us through.
That's correct. So it's funding. So the European Commission, I suppose, realized after so many years of investing billions of euros in R&D projects that it was time to start deploying, let's say, non-dilutive funding in the form of grants, so the grant component, and capital, so the equity component in very specific startups and scale-ups that are in the deep tech sector. And that's, I suppose, why they started at the very beginning back in 2014 with the so-called SME instrument. So they were targeting more and more, let's say, single applicant startups and scale-ups that had a clear plan to bring the technology to market and develop products that had a clear market fit, because in the past was, okay, let's deploy public funding to encourage researchers to work on breakthrough technology, but not necessarily then the breakthrough technology had any incentive to, let's say, be advanced with, let's say, an objective of, okay, I'm going to develop this technology because one day I want to make money out of it. That was not the mentality back in the days, right?
Yeah.
So the European Commission realized, okay, there's a big opportunity here in Europe to deploy public funding in the form of non-dilutive grants and even capital equity inject.
Non-diluted grant just simply means a grant that you don't have to pay back, right? It's just a gift.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's non-dilutive. Yeah,
so
you don't have to reimburse it. Yeah.
Yeah. So your clients are usually young companies that work on some sort of technology based on deep tech that apply for funding from the European Commission, specifically for deep tech companies or startups, we can say. And so what does your job consist of then?
Okay. So first and foremost, our job is very specific because let's remind everyone, Horizon Europe is a 7-year framework program, 95 billion euros, 3 pillars, and that includes 700 R&D grants and funding schemes. When it comes to us, we are, I would say, hyper-specialized in something called the European Innovation Council that is targeting breakthrough technology with a clear idea to bring that breakthrough technology one day to market. So within the European Innovation Council, you have 3 funding schemes. You have Pathfinder, you have Transition, and you have the Accelerator. Let's say today we can talk about the EIC Accelerator because you were talking about the companies we're working with. So the companies we're working with are, you were saying, deep tech, and then I can give some examples. So they are deep tech companies that are going for either Transition or the Accelerator. But today let's talk about the EIC Accelerator. So usually those companies are companies in, let's say, medtech, like class 3 implantable devices that require a lot of time and clinical validation before being let's say, clinically approved by the MDR, Medical Device Regulation in Europe, or the FDA in the US. Yeah, then we have breakthrough technology that is in line with the key strategic priorities of the European Commission, like, for instance, energy storage or precision fermentation in the food industry, or I would, one of the hottest topic everyone is talking about it is quantum computing. Now there's a clear interest in using and leveraging machine learning to speed up the process of drug discovery and development. Then there's all, let's say, the sector in the agri-tech. Yeah.
So you would say I would say then, like, because I work in the same sector, obviously, I know what you're talking about. Would you say it's changed notably now from a focus basically just purely on growth and prosperity for entrepreneurs to a more deliberate political attempts to spur innovation in sectors that will help society? Is that a fair statement?
I would agree with the second statement. So I suppose that's a clear focus by the European Union to deploy public funding and what I call, at the end of the day, is public funding, can be in the form of non-dilutive grants that you don't have to reimburse and, equity. There's a clear idea to deploy funding to do 2 things. One, to what you were saying, provide financial resources to companies that are in line with the key strategic priorities of the European Union, like, the tech sovereignty, like, less reliance because of geopolitical reasons on, let's say, the energy coming from Russia or the technology coming from China. There's a fantastic idea that I really like, is to build a smart supply chain in Europe in specific strategic sectors, like, for instance, in the semiconductor sector, because everyone is talking about the changes, development of generative AI, but generative AI needs advanced semiconductor, advanced chipset, and so on. So now there's a clear idea of the European Union to invest that technology and to provide the financial resources not only to advance the technology, but to the risk on those technologies, and I would say create a sort of leverage mechanism where they invest, and then private investors are going to pour even more money in those companies and those technologies. So I suppose that's the vision.
Okay, excellent. So, for example, when you talk about equity, if you were a private investor, you would seek a return. You would seek an exit. Let's say, what they call an exit, no, like a return on investment. Usually, within 5 or 10 years, with even in the deep tech sector in Silicon Valley. What kind of exits, considering this concept of technological sovereignty that you mentioned, that's one part, I guess, of the question. What is technological sovereignty? Secondly, what are the exits that the entrepreneurs that are funded by the European Commission with public money, what are the exits that they can and usually take to pay back with profit, I assume, the European people through the European Commission? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So the exit strategy depends on the VC focus on the industry and the market segment, and the let's say return that are expected, they depend on let's say the investment thesis of the VC fund. But what is clear when it comes to the European Union through the EIC funds, they want to deploy patient capital. So patient capital, that means that they don't expect returns before 10 years from when they invest into the company. And because the companies they are investing in are companies that I would say, based on my analysis, because I did analyze the 631 companies awarded money from the EIC Accelerator, 80% of them, they have reputable investors already on board. So I suppose that I would call it a smart move, because in the industry, everybody knows, if you're talking about deep tech by definition is high risk. High risk, that means that there's a high chance that it's going to fail. But we know, based on historical data, that VC funds, they are used to, let's say, invest in 10 companies, and they know that probably 7, 8 of them, they're going to fail, but the 2 they invested in, they are going to guarantee the return that the general partners of the fund agree on with their investors, the limited partners, right? So this is exactly the same mechanism. So from that point of view, I have to say, what is the timeline? Timeline is at least 10 years, because we're talking about patient capital. The first injections, they were done in 2022. So we will start seeing the first return on investment, I suppose, starting from 2032. But I have to say that there are companies that make me feel confident that there's going to be very good returns for the EIC fund. Again, yeah.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah, again, you never know in 2024 what can happen, but you can only, as an analyst, you can only see the distribution of capital across certain industries, and then you do an analysis of let's say the funds that those companies have in their cap table, and when you look at the historical returns generated by those funds, you feel confident for the future. So I have to say that so far, in most cases, they operated in a very smart and intelligent way.
Excellent. And what is, just out of curiosity, what is the mechanism in which they pay the European Investment Bank, which is the bank that lends them the equity portion of this grant that they win? How do they actually pay them back? And what are the terms of a normal deal, let's say?
Yeah.
Do you know that?
So bear in mind, I suppose I cannot disclose anything that is confidential, because I'm under NDA with our clients. But what I can,
hypothetical example. Yeah.
Yeah, I can say what is of public knowledge. So let's call it the capital, the equity is deployed through the EIC fund. The money is transferred to the companies. In certain cases, they use convertible loan notes. In other cases, it's direct equity. In other cases, it's safe. So the money is deployed to the companies. So those companies, they have to have term sheets that have been agreed on with their lead investors, shareholder agreement, corporate governance structure, and then it really depends on a case by case way, the way they have deployed the capital in the company and expected return. So in terms of the way they operate, they have a partner. I'm talking about the EIC fund. They have a partner that is working on all the, let's say, compliance, admin activities, because it's required by the legal framework. You have to do a lot of KYC, KYB, know your customer, know your business, AML. You have to double check.
Sorry, what's AML?
Anti-money laundering.
Okay.
Because for instance, I'll give you a practical example. Rightly so, when you do a due diligence on a company that you want to invest in, and it's taxpayers' money, right? So by law, you cannot invest in a company where there are investors from Russia, rightly so, right? So you have to do a due diligence on the companies. You have to make sure that everyone that is in the cap table, because you have to comply with the European regulation, right? And that's the partner that is working on the admin activities. And then you have the representative from the European Investment Bank that are the ones that are in charge of the due diligence, the negotiation. They review the term sheet, they review the shareholder agreements, they review let's say all the information that are typically provided to a VC fund, like the business plan and so on. So that's the mechanism. But then if you ask me what is the let's say most efficient and ideally best way to receive the money once the deal or the company starts the negotiation, is always when you bring a lead investor that is contributing to at least to 50% of the round. So I suppose is the best way to deal with, let's call it, the typical bureaucracy.
Okay. Emmanuele Angione, I thank you very much for your time. Lira Limited is a very successful and well-known consulting company in this sector. You have a newsletter. In fact, that's how I know of you and came to know you. Which is, remind me what your newsletter is called. It's very informative.
I publish every month a newsletter on the EIC Accelerator. It's called the EIC Accelerator Data and Stats, because I only talk about the data and stats and insights on this funding scheme. And once a year, I publish a report on the EIC Accelerator Data and Stats that is basically collecting and presenting all the data for that year and all the cumulative data of this funding scheme since its inception in the fully fledged form that happened in 2021. And in September, there's going to be a brand new report where I'm going to analyze the 68 companies selected in March this year, just to understand some trends, like what kind of companies are selected in terms of where they are in the private funding cycle, how old are they, and how many employees they have, and what are the most successful sectors. So it's going to be really high level. It's not going to be an academic paper. It's not going to be
it's very understandable. Yeah, it's very understandable.
Really high level.
Great. I'm looking forward to reading that.
Thanks, John.
Thank you very much. Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure talking to you, Emmanuele.
Likewise.
And take care. Talk soon.
You too. Bye.